Our second speaker today is Professor Abdullatif Al Shamsi. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from Duke University, and he published extensively in related fields in mechanical engineering, and he's an associate professor at the UAE University. He's currently the managing director of the Institute of Applied Technology, and he employs basically the vision of making the Institute of Applied Technology career technical education systems to basically educate students to be leaders and to be scientists of the future. Dr. Abdullatif Al Shamsi is highly enthusiastic about the use of technology in education, and I'm sure he will give us a very exciting talk. So please welcome Dr. Abdullatif Al Shamsi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud, for the introduction. I just realized it's a 40-minute talk, so that's why I brought my bottle of water here. And I realize all of my talk is in this slide. I'll try to elaborate as much as I can. So I would like to start by talking about creating a culture of smart learning. Learning is always smart. I don't think it's never been it's not smart, so it's always been smart. It is the way, how do we bring a culture of smart learning? How do we blend what we have heard this morning, all the infrastructure, devices, pedagogies, learning, assessment, PD, all together into creating a smart culture learning. And this is what's important. This is what we're trying to achieve all together here. When we talk about technology has always been there. It's been in education. In fact, many of us always tend to forget that technology started back in 1952 when the TV was introduced. And I call that the TV generation. And in fact, in the old days, and even in education, some of the schools used to use TV as part of the learning. So that was, technology was there. And then in 1992, the internet was introduced, and that made a huge impact in education. And we defined that era as the net generation. Why? Because of the easy access to the information all the time with a click of a button. However, in 2007, when the iPad was introduced, we had a generation that is more interactive. And the technology now to be introduced in different ways, not just a matter of information that we access. So this is what I refer to as the iPad generation. And the iPad generation, not necessarily that you were born with 2007, but is how do you effectively utilize the iPad and the interactive of the students. Ultimately, what we always try to achieve here is how do we trigger the interest of the students? How do we motivate students? How do we make all these technologies really impact in our learning system, and students will learn more and benefit more? In fact, what we have to realize now, it is no longer an option using the technology inside the classroom or in the schools. Maybe in the old days, we used to have laptops, and we have books, and we have some access to different resources. But now it's becoming a mandatory that we have to use the technology. Why? Because this is how the iPad generation like to be engaged. They use all these gadgets since they were born, and it is part of the day-to-day life. And that, therefore, we as an educator became more mandated to us. How do we bring this technology? How do we make it impact? And how do we make an effect on those students? So talking about interactive and collaborative learning, we heard already about that just earlier. It's a very important part of the student's life. How do we make a student-centered learning? How do we engage all these gadgets together? And this is what I would like, in fact, to give a little bit more emphasis today. And how do we create that collaborative learning? How do we create that culture of smart learning? It has never been about throwing some devices inside the classroom And many of us would think that is if all of our students will have an access, such as laptops or on iPads or on iPhones or Microsoft laptops and so on, it will do the learning. It is not. It's a mix. It's of many different components and elements need to be brought together. And this is what I would like to highlight today, is talking about smart learning environment. And to give an example, what is a smart learning environment? We all know it's the students in a smart learning environment are always connected to learn anywhere, anytime, 24/7. And this is what we mean by engagement and motivating students all the time. And I would like to share with you some of the ideas, how do we bring those together. So as part of the devices together, it is also bringing connectivity all the time. But is the connectivity is enough? That's also another question that we need to highlight. What I would like to say here, there are so many different components that need to be put together in creating a smart learning environment. The components you see here in the slide are about 35 pieces. Maybe devices is one piece of it. Internet is one piece of it. Access to high bandwidth is another piece of it. Infrastructure, e-learning, LMS, and most importantly is the PD of our teaching staff. How do we bring our teachers to be to cope with this technology? How do they pick up all these things? So there are so many different elements and components need to be brought together and created in a systematic way to create the learning environment, the smart learning environment. In this presentation, maybe I will give you a practical application in the Institute of Applied Technology that we think it works. I know we just scratched the surface, if you allow me to use this phrase. In technology, there are so many things need to be done more. There are so many challenges we face, and we are still facing those. But I think we have something that is working, and we have data that we can show that we are really making some impact on the students. Is the impact they are making it what we all ambitious and what we would like to achieve? That's another question. But through the technology and through bringing smart learning environment, we think it's working for now. When we talk about number one part is the infrastructure. So the infrastructure has, we all know, 3 components of it. And through our schooling system, since we are spread throughout the United Arab Emirates in 9 different locations, serving about 4,400 students, it's important to have access to the network with a good infrastructure. For example, throughout the schools we have, there are about 800 access points for a Wi-Fi, a big storage area, and internet of 1 gigabyte bandwidth, and thanks to Ankabut for helping us to make this connectivity is there. So this is one part of it where we think wireless connectivity and enhancing the quality of the learning environment, it helps us to deliver the one-to-one solution. We started back in 2009 by using the laptops programs for every student, and now in 2012 we introduced the iPad for all the students, and this is also bringing the connectivity together. And the advantages of the high quality infrastructure, we see there is a continuous support. That is what helping us. Having a good infrastructure is the support to the students all the time, and it enhances the communication between admins, between teachers and students. It also helps in increasing the collaborative learning. It's very important inside the classroom and also outside the classroom. It increases the students' engagement, and that is the critical part, where the students are continuously engaged into different programs, into different resources that they have access to, simulations and so on. And that's increased, of course, the satisfaction. Increase also access to digital resources through IAT Plato Learning Management System. That is where the container that put all the learning resources there available to help achieve the learning outcomes that is set by the schools. So this is when we talk about the infrastructure. Now, another important component is that how do we create a digital learning content that is specifically customized to serve your learning outcomes. as schools, as programs, and so on. So, and the e-contents, there are different resources. We all know there is tons of resources that is available out there, but not necessarily all of them would fit your outcomes or would fit your program's needs. So there is a ways to outsource and develop a digital learning resources. And there are so many of them, like we said, such as videos, tutorials, interactive, ebooks, simulations, and so on. The use of all these materials, it helps for the students to keep them continuously engaged. And when it comes to the interactive material, it's to use the iBook, for example, format, where it gets the students engaged in an interactive through looking at the different pictures or video clips inside the iBook. The iBooks, in fact, is one of the things we found it extremely engagement with the students. It's really make a huge impact on the students reading and learning from those books. No longer the printed books, especially when it comes in science and technology, really excite students because they find it very boring and there's a lot of material that it's difficult to comprehend. But when using the iBooks, it makes it easier, it makes it accessible. So the learning portals is one place where all those digital learning contents is housed and cohesively embedded into a meaningful learning activities. And most importantly, it is accessed anytime, anywhere. And this is, it shows a snapshot here of the Plato system where you have the resources, the video library, LRC resources, messenger for students' collaborative learning and communication with their peers and with their teachers, courses, and my folder for the students' worksheets. So the Plato, it stands for the Portal for Learning Applied Technology Online. It is, in fact, one of the things after looking at different solutions, any LMS available out there still need to be customized to fit your needs. So that's why we decided to build our own in-house Moodle-based learning management system. It's customized for our own needs. It's hosted locally and within our local service throughout the campuses where the students can access it with a high band all the time. Now, when we talk about the Plato system, this shows, for example, a sample of the courses that is listed when the student would access and see what's in their courses that they need to work on. And if we zoom in the courses, with this what we would see inside the course of all the materials related, whether it's a different format and so on, posted by the teachers. And also inside each course there is a document where it gives each lesson the objectives and the outcomes and how it would be assessed. Now, what does the Plato offer? It offers contents. So they are in the high school system in IAT. There's about 79 core courses, 27 common courses, and there is 108 cluster. It's a repository for nearly 42,000 digital learning resources, so the students can access and look at those resources all the time. It's a collaboration, so it's include the Web 2 features, payloads and wikis, where the students and teachers are engaged throughout the hour. And it's a communication that include the discussion format and the messenger services. That's also one of the important key elements we found it in establishing the collaborative learning. Assignments, there are thousands of assignments and assessments, quizzes, all the time where the students will have to go through them to make sure that they have achieved the outcomes of those learning resources. School management element, so it's not only about the contents for the learning and outcomes, but also includes the other elements such as teaching load, submission marks, and so on. It also gives access to parents. So we have 521 teachers accessing the Plato all the time, with 4,487 students, and there's about 1,200 parents who have access to those information. If we compare the engagement, this is another key element that we will think what is the technologies bringing and creating the culture of smart learning. Shows the hits of how many students accessing the Plato during the school day and after the school hours. And it shows about 50% of the students will go back home and they log in and they use the resources, going through the homeworks and go through all these activities that already exist on the Plato system. So this is another way where we demonstrate here how much is the engagement. And this is one of the things we always like to achieve, is the motivation of the students and the excitement of the students in the e-learning.
I think that the teacher needs us to do in class, she uploads it on Plato, and then we download it from there, and we start working, and we submit it through Plato as well.
Plato is a portal for learning applied technology online. It was developed by the academic services to empower students, engage parents, and transfer teaching and learning.
I think that Plato is a really good place to put all the information there for the girls for all their subjects, so that they know that if they've missed something, that they can go to Plato and they can find the information.
Principal of the campus, I have a privilege as an administrator to monitor teachers' account, students' account, to see what teachers are uploading, how they are using it, are students interacting by using Plato.
So that was a testimony from a student, from a teacher, from administrator on the Plato. But one of the key important things I have to mention here is the Plato, it gives us, as an administrators, is to see the academic transaction that take place inside the classroom. In the old days, yes, we provide teachers with certain PDs, and we ask them to follow certain ways of delivering those instructions. However, when they are inside the classroom, the teachers will do the way they've been trained to do, or they are feeling more relaxed about delivering those instructions. The advantage that Plato does, it gives all the academic transactions that take place inside the classrooms, the accessing to those resources, students' engagement inside the classroom. And you can see as an administrator with having such an LMS system where you see the teacher's engagement, how much access of those resources is being used, how much is being utilized, how the students are interacting, and that's, I think, one of the great advantages. One of the things also we noticed that maybe in the old days, using the traditional method of teaching, there used to be some teachers who are very distinguished, and they are like kind of a bright and star teachers, so and so. With the introduction of the technology more effectively, we find another breed of teachers that they start to rise. We find another type of teachers who really effectively using the technology, and they are becoming more of kind of creative in delivering those learning and delivering those resources in a different way. And that's not necessarily the old teachers who were having a limited access or use of technology, they would have the same advantage. And this is, I think, one of the ways also gives the teachers an opportunity to bring their best and to effectively use the learning management system and to effectively use the technology. And the next thing I would like to also to highlight is the smart teaching and learning devices. There's so many talks about devices. We are still exploring. But what we used here, at least for now, is that something that needs to be, again, interactive with the students. We heard this morning the talk by Rob about about this generation and how digitally they use those kind of devices. And I totally agree and believe that the I generation or the iPad generation, they think differently. They are, like Rob mentioned, they are multitasking type of students. They are very research oriented. They try to look for things, and that requires a different ways of approaching the I generation. In fact, we find them, they are engaged. They are, even their way of thinking is digitally rewired. It's their brain of approaching and looking at the problems is with the heavy engagement of the technology. That is where we can use this technology as an advantage to bring the students on board. So the one-to-one model, there's so many different choices. Bringing your own device, for example, or school devices where the students will use them inside the schools and will leave them inside the schools and then come back the other day and use them again. Or the ones that we have used, in fact, is deploying a devices where all the students will have the same kind of device. It's provided by the school, and the students will have the learning materials around the clock. There will be continuous access to those learning resources and engagement by their peers, by their teachers, and so on. So that gives the advantage when we deploy our own devices at the schools, because it has all the setup and the format that is needed. When it comes to the contents, it's of course the type of devices we are using. This is just an example, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, but I'm saying this is what we are using as a medium in our schooling system. So our students uses the MacBook Pro, and they uses the iPad and Mac Pro both together in a grade 10. And in fact, and the reason is that we have those both devices is that because for now at least, we see the iPad as more of a viewing kind of a device, where the Mac is of a production type of a device where you can crunch numbers in it. And that is maybe the advantage where we have to use both at certain cases. For example, in grade 9, we use only the iPad. So the usage of devices, that's, of course, with the changes in the technology and the introduction of different devices every day, that's always under debate and discussion. Transforming the teaching method, I think this is one of the very critical areas where we can always bring the state-of-the-art devices, state-of-the-art infrastructure, and we can, and with a high bandwidth, but at the end of the day is how do you bring the teachers to the right level, and how do you engage the teachers with those kind of devices. And frankly speaking, when you talk about teachers, and the teacher knows that the students have ways to access the information all the time, and they can correct the teacher if they are wrong, and you no longer can hide away information, for example, or give the wrong information to students. The students always was challenging. That's a scare for teachers, for many of us, when we stand in front of this group of students and we try to tell them about different things, and if we are not 100% sure about the information that we have. So how do we bring the teachers to the right use of pedagogies? I think this is one of the key challenges, and this is one of the things that continuously need to be done and updated and get different PD sessions. For example, in the Applied Technology High School, this is an example where the teachers engage with the students, and as you can see, the students are grouped together. It's a student-centered learning type, and the teacher will move around with the ones for the group that need help, and that's a kind of way that is we need to train our teachers to become more of in this way. So there is new skills, like I said earlier, that is the teachers who really become very creative and very elaborative about, and focusing more on the student-centered learning and the collaborative learning. Here's another example about the flipped classroom, and this is one of our teachers who
I think that the e-learning situation that we have in this school and the opportunities that our students have here is an incredible opportunity. Each of the boys with their laptop or their iPad has access to a variety of different educational tools. In my 9th grade class, where they have the iPad, I have flipped the classroom, and so my students watch a video, a teaching video that I have created and pre-recorded for homework. When they enter the classroom, my students then we're able to have a conversation with regards to what parts of the video they did not understand, parts that I need to clarify, and they get to spend the larger portion of the class then working on their assignment rather than having to struggle with those problems at home. I'm there to assist them. Their peers are there to assist them.
Well, for sure, one of the flipped classroom is one of the things that we find it really makes a big difference in the students' impact and learning. Having students to go through the classes or the instructions while they are at home, and then they come back and do the problems inside the classrooms, and have the teachers to help them. It's a model that we find it's very effectively used. And this is where teachers need to be brought together and to be able to do those and to deliver those kind of instructions. So the challenge, I find it the most challenging part, I would say, in the whole system of building the smart learning environment is bringing the teachers and developing teachers to use those kind of technologies effectively inside the classroom. So when we talk about the PD for our faculty, there are different types of PD models. is being delivered for our instructors. There are, of course, central instructional PDs, which is 30 hours per teacher per year, and that is in 2012. And of course, we are working on increasing this number of hours, and that is to train the trainers. And then, there, of course, there's a campus-based PD, which is delivered on a weekly basis, in fact, and this goes between 10 to 15 hours per teacher in last year. But we think this is also, it's not enough to bring the teachers into to the right level, because the technology is rapidly changing and there's so many things being introduced every day. Other type of PD, of course, there's in the Plato system. They're loaded of instructional material for the teachers to go through and to enhance their teaching pedagogies. This is a session of the PD that is conducted at the central level. It's typically carried out during the weekends, so we ask the teachers to come on Saturdays to have those kind of sessions conducted. So creating a culture of smart learning, it's important that we always need to look at that's the motto of the conference, is the global way of thinking, and how do we implement it locally. Globally is that how do we bring all these elements together. It's not about single devices or single components. It's not only about the infrastructure, it's also about having a good learning management system, having a good PD sessions and training sessions for teachers. It's about the e-contents. That's another challenge, is how do we make our e-contents is in an interactive, exciting way where the students are engaged and they wanted to use it effectively. There's so many things we can do using, for example, simulations, and with those simulations we find that it's one of the key things that really makes a big impact on the students, where they can try things different time in different ways. And there are so many different tools that's available, but how do we bring, what's the resources on the internet, whether it's, and how do we bring them together, and how do we customize it to fit our learning objectives? That's also the things that need to be done through the system. So it's a 35 elements to be put together to create that smart learning environment. And I think having no matter how advanced the technologies, it's still not enough to foster a successful smart learning environment. It's about planning, training, and supporting teachers and students. Every step on the way is essential. And like I said, it's just the beginning for us. There's so many things need to be done more, and with the things that is continuously changes, we have to be up to date on what's going on. And with the next step, I think it is trying to quantify the e-learning impact on students' performance. That is something still in research. That's still one of the things that we always try to strive to make happen. And how do we draw the correlation between what we introduce in terms of e-learning activities, and how does it correlate to the students' impact in learning, and how do they benefit out of it? It's important, how do we measure the effectiveness tool in smart learning environment? One of the ways we found it, like I mentioned earlier, is the engagement of the students, and using the LMS around the clock, and how much activities that done outside the classroom and during the weekends. I think all these kind of components also helps in measuring the effectiveness, but we need to kind of come up with different tools and correlations, and that we can measure and see the impact that it is happening. And it is also equally important that to continue to explore more tools to enhance the learning environment. Like we said, the technology is rapidly changing, and there are access to many more resources every day pass by. And I think with that should conclude my presentation, and I'm sure there's plenty of questions that will be asked, and I'll keep that for the Q&A session. Thank you.